White woman calls cops on black wedding, pours wine on bride, unaware they are both FBI agents. What would you do if the happiest day of your life suddenly turned into a public nightmare? Imagine standing under soft white lights, surrounded by flowers, music, and loved ones, about to say, "I do," to the love of your life, when a stranger decides you don't belong. Not because of noise. Not because of rules. But because of who you are. Today's story is not just about a wedding. It's about assumptions, entitlement, and the dangerous power of prejudice when mixed with authority. It's about a woman who believed one phone call could ruin everything, and a couple who never needed to raise their voices because they carried something far stronger than anger. This is a story about control versus composure. About humiliation versus dignity. And about how life sometimes delivers the most unexpected consequences to those who act without thinking. What happens when a woman pours wine on a bride in front of guests? What happens when police are called to handle a situation that was never a crime? And what happens when the people being targeted turn out to be far more powerful than anyone could imagine? Stay with this story until the end, because nothing unfolds the way you expect. And before we begin, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because stories like this deserve to be heard. What would you do if the happiest day of your life suddenly turned into a public nightmare? Imagine standing under soft white lights, surrounded by flowers, music, and loved ones, about to say, "I do," to the love of your life, when a stranger decides you don't belong. Not because of noise. Not because of rules. But because of who you are. Today's story is not just about a wedding. It's about assumptions, entitlement, and the dangerous power of prejudice when mixed with authority. It's about a woman who believed one phone call could ruin everything, and a couple who never needed to raise their voices because they carried something far stronger than anger. This is a story about control versus composure. About humiliation versus dignity. And about how life sometimes delivers the most unexpected consequences to those who act without thinking. What happens when a woman pours wine on a bride in front of guests? What happens when police are called to handle a situation that was never a crime? And what happens when the people being targeted turn out to be far more powerful than anyone could imagine? Stay with this story until the end, because nothing unfolds the way you expect. And before we begin, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because stories like this deserve to be heard. Now, let's begin. The wedding was supposed to be perfect. A private vineyard sat just outside Napa Valley, its hills glowing gold under the late afternoon sun. White chairs lined the aisle in perfect symmetry. Soft jazz floated through the air as guests laughed, hugged, and took photos beneath hanging lights and floral arches. Alyssa Monroe stood at the center of it all. She was radiant, wrapped in an elegant ivory gown, her natural curls pinned back just enough to reveal a calm, confident smile. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from excitement. Across from her stood her fiancé, Daniel Wright. Tall. Composed. Dressed sharply in a tailored black tuxedo. His eyes never left hers. They had waited years for this moment. What no one knew, what no one could guess, was that both Alyssa and Daniel were senior FBI agents. They spent their lives undercover, blending in, observing, listening. Today was the one day they weren't agents. They were just a bride and groom. At least, that's what they thought. From the far edge of the vineyard, a woman named Karen Whitmore watched the ceremony with tight lips and narrowed eyes. She wasn't family. She wasn't invited. Karen lived in the luxury estate bordering the vineyard. She had tolerated events here before, wine tastings, charity galas, but something about this wedding bothered her. The music. The laughter. And most of all, the people. Her gaze lingered on the guests. Mostly black professionals, dressed elegantly, celebrating loudly and unapologetically. She scoffed. "This is getting out of hand," she muttered. Karen marched toward the reception area just as the officiant finished speaking. Applause erupted. Cheers filled the air. Alyssa and Daniel kissed. That's when Karen snapped. She stormed up to the head table, heels clicking sharply against the stone floor. "Excuse me," she shouted. The music faltered. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Alyssa blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, can I help you?" Karen folded her arms. "This is a private area. You people are being disruptive. I've already had complaints." Daniel stepped forward calmly. "Ma'am, this venue was reserved months ago. Everything is permitted." Karen laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Oh please. I know how this goes. You rent a space, then act like you own everything." A murmur rippled through the guests. Alyssa felt her chest tighten, but she kept her voice steady. "Today is our wedding. If there's an issue, we can have the venue manager speak with you." Karen's eyes locked onto Alyssa's dress. "Wedding?" she sneered. "This looks more like a party that's gotten out of control." Then she reached for a nearby glass of red wine. No one had time to react. Karen flung the wine forward. It splashed across Alyssa's gown, deep crimson staining white silk. Gasps echoed across the vineyard. Alyssa froze. For a split second, the world went silent. Daniel clenched his jaw, but didn't move. Karen straightened, satisfied. "Maybe now you'll understand you're not welcome here." Someone shouted, "What is wrong with you?" Karen ignored them, already pulling out her phone. "I'm calling the police," she announced loudly. "There's a disturbance. I feel threatened." Daniel's voice was low, controlled. "You just assaulted my wife." Karen smirked. "Try proving that." She turned away, dialing. Alyssa looked down at her ruined dress, then slowly lifted her head. Her expression changed, not to anger, not to tears, but to something colder. Sharper. She leaned toward Daniel and whispered, "Let her call." Daniel nodded once. Around them, guests stood, furious, shocked, recording on their phones. Sirens could already be heard in the distance. Karen smiled to herself. She had no idea. She had just made the worst mistake of her life. The first patrol car arrived just as the sun dipped behind the vineyard hills. Red and blue lights flashed across white tablecloths and shattered the calm that once defined the evening. Conversation stopped. Phones came up. Guests instinctively formed a protective circle around Alyssa and Daniel. Karen Whitmore stepped forward eagerly, waving her arm. "Over here," she called. "Thank God you're here." Two officers exited the vehicle, Officer Reynolds and Officer Martinez. They took in the scene. The wedding decor, the crowd, the tense silence, and the wine-soaked bride standing calmly at the center of it all. Karen rushed to them before they could speak. "These people are trespassing," she said breathlessly. "They're loud, aggressive, and one of them threatened me." Officer Martinez frowned. "Ma'am, whose property is this?" "The vineyard," Karen snapped. "And I live next door. I know the owners. This is not what they allow here." Daniel stepped forward slowly, hands visible. "Officers, this event is fully permitted. We have the paperwork, the venue manager, and multiple witnesses. This woman approached us unprovoked and poured wine on my wife." Karen gasped dramatically. "That is a lie. She lunged at me." Alyssa said nothing. She simply reached for a napkin and dabbed at her dress, her hand steady. Officer Reynolds looked between them. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "did you pour wine on the bride?" Karen hesitated, just for a second. "It was an accident." The crowd erupted. "You threw it. We have it on video. That's assault." Phones were now clearly visible, recording everything. Officer Martinez raised a hand. Everyone calmed down. Karen crossed her arms again, confidence returning. Look, I don't feel safe. I want them removed. Especially him, she added, pointing at Daniel. He looks dangerous. Daniel inhaled slowly. Officer, he said evenly, may I ask what crime you're investigating? Karen scoffed. See? He's being hostile. Officer Reynolds turned to Daniel. Sir, we just need to de-escalate. Daniel nodded. Of course. He reached into his jacket pocket. Karen shouted, he's reaching for something. Several guests shouted back. Relax. Daniel withdrew a slim leather wallet and held it out. Before this goes any further, he said, I think it's important you see this. Officer Reynolds took the wallet, opened it, and froze. His expression changed instantly. Officer Martinez leaned in, then straightened sharply. Both officers looked back at Daniel, then at Alyssa. Sir, ma'am, Officer Reynolds said carefully, could you step aside with us? Karen smiled smugly. Finally. A few feet away, Officer Reynolds lowered his voice. Agent Wright? Daniel nodded once. And Agent Monroe? Martinez asked. Alyssa met his eyes. Yes. The officers exchanged a look filled with disbelief. Karen noticed the shift. What's going on? She demanded. Why are you whispering? Officer Reynolds turned back toward her, posture stiff now. Ma'am, we need you to remain calm. Karen laughed. Oh, I am calm. I just want these people gone. Officer Martinez spoke firmly. Ma'am, this wedding is lawful. The couple has broken no laws. Karen's smile faltered. Then arrest them for disturbing the peace. Officer Reynolds shook his head. There is no disturbance, other than the one you caused. Karen's face flushed. Excuse me. Multiple witnesses and video evidence show you poured wine on the bride, Martinez continued. That constitutes assault. Karen stared at them. You can't be serious. Daniel stepped back beside Alyssa, placing a hand over hers. Karen's voice rose. Do you know who I am? Alyssa finally spoke. Calm. Clear. No, she said. But we're about to find out. Officer Reynolds took a breath. Ma'am, please place your hands behind your back. Karen froze. What? You're being detained while we sort this out. The vineyard exploded into murmurs. Karen's eyes darted wildly. This is ridiculous. They're lying to you. Officer Martinez gestured toward the phones. We have video from at least 12 angles. Karen's voice cracked. You're taking their side. Officer Reynolds replied evenly, we're taking the side of the law. As Karen was escorted toward the patrol car, she turned back, venom in her eyes. This isn't over, she hissed at Alyssa. You think you've won? Alyssa stepped forward, wine-stained gown glowing in the flashing lights. Actually, she said softly, you ended it. Karen was placed in the back seat, still protesting. The officers returned. Officer Martinez cleared his throat. Agents, would you like us to file this officially? Daniel looked at Alyssa. She glanced at her dress, then at the guests, then at the sunset still painting the sky. Yes, she said. We would. Within minutes, a supervisor arrived. Then another. Karen's name was run. Her history surfaced, previous complaints, false reports, harassment warnings from neighbors. By the time the paperwork was done, Karen Whitmore was no longer yelling. She was silent. As she was driven away, Alyssa leaned into Daniel. I didn't think our wedding would include an arrest, she murmured. Daniel smiled faintly. Adds character. The venue manager approached nervously. I'm so sorry. We'll cover everything, the dress, the delay, whatever you need. Alyssa shook her head. Just give us 10 minutes. The guests gathered again. Someone turned the music back on, soft at first, then louder. Alyssa disappeared briefly and returned wearing a simple white backup dress she'd brought just in case. Daniel took her hand. The officiant cleared his throat. Shall we continue? Cheers erupted. As they exchanged vows, Alyssa's voice never wavered. When Daniel said, "I do," the crowd applauded louder than ever. Later, under the stars, a guest raised a glass. To the bride and groom, he said, who showed grace under pressure, and reminded us that dignity is power. Alyssa smiled. Not because Karen was gone. Not because justice was served. But because she married the love of her life, and never once had to lose herself to prove her worth. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story like this.